All right, thank you guys so much for coming today, and welcome to the Launch Labs How to Fund a Startup panel. My name is Scott Syker, and I'm one of the graduate assistants here at the Launch Lab. And essentially the way this is going to work is we're going to start by letting the panelists introduce themselves and tell you about their background, and then we'll open up the panel to questions. So, Guy, do you want to go ahead and start? We'll just go straight down the line.
I said it. Yeah.
Strategic planning here.
In the middle. And actually, maybe it is a little bit better when we kind of started this way. We're kind of a hybrid organization, so we're a venture development organization. Oh, yeah, I'm Dr. Dudo. West Virginia High Tech Foundation, the Innova Commercialization Group. Thank you. And basically what that means is we take opportunities, prospects, from cocktail napkin all the way to finished product, and then we do early stage investment. And so you'll come in with an idea, and basically we'll kind of look at it from where are you structurally as an organization? What gaps do you have filling in there? As far as professional assistance, what kind of professional assistance do you need to help you put together the strategy and the business plan? Do you need accounting, finance, web development, competitive analysis, technology review? We've got grant funding that we can help offset the cost of that. We've got relationships across the state. What do you need to develop your product? And we formed a commercialization network now where we can bring in some people to help you on the design, the development, and help you get it again from cocktail napkin to prototype. Once it's ready for market, we basically can do early stage investments.
That's it?
That's it for now.
Okay. My name is Mike Green. I'm the managing director of a venture capital fund called Mountain State Capital. Okay, so you all have watched Shark Tank, so you know how that works. So Tim will be Mr. Wonderful today. I won't be.
Yeah.
But the way that works, of course, is we are the ones that are going to come and provide that, just what they said, venture capital. And I think during the discussion here, we'll try to explain to you all what what the sequence of events are and what the opportunities are for funding from the fact that you can get grants and loans and support from the state, from other entities, from the university. But eventually, what you're going to be, if your company is growing, you're going to probably look to try to acquire some venture capital. And we'll get into what that's all about sometime. Picture Shark Tank, and you'll get a general idea of
Which one would you do?
I would like to be Lori because she's just making zillions of dollars. And she's lots more than I am. But ultimately, it'll boil down to what kind of money you're going to need to start your company if you're an entrepreneur. Typical venture capital is usually the second stage after what they call initial funding from, say, grants or the state. And then you'll get what they call seed capital or early stage capital after that. And that's where venture capital. But prior to that, there are other opportunities, and Tim can tell you a little bit about his organization. We'll talk about how the banks fit in and microloans fit in as well. So the whole, let's say, the line of where the money comes from, what that particular sequence looks like. Okay?
So I'm way below the line. Good evening, afternoon, I think we're still around there. My name's Tim James. I'm with First Microloan of West Virginia. We are the SBA Microloan Fund. We cover both southwestern PA and like 80% of West Virginia. What the Microloan Fund is a business loan. It is a loan that goes from $5,000 to $50,000. It is designed to work with funding startups to existing businesses to kind of a little bit of everything. As Mike's saying, there is a distinct line between the venture capital side of it and then the debt financing side of things. I am way over on the debt financing side of things. We traditionally are underneath, actually, the traditional banks, the West Bancos, Uniteds, those traditional banks of the world, lending institutions. We work a lot with folks who are not, by definition, bankable. And what I mean by that is you don't fit that pretty little mold that the banks need you to fit in when you go to visit their loan officers. We step in to help you, to also help the bank, to get you to be the point where you are bankable, where you move up from us to the traditional banks. The microloan fund does a lot of stuff. The only thing we don't do is we don't buy buildings. That's what the banks do. We let them play with the real estate market. We do the dirty stuff on the other end that they don't want to play with: inventory, equipment, working capital, and stuff like that. Your traditional FF&E. And as I said, we go from all ends of the spectrum, working with different things. We're not a credit-driven agency like traditional banks are, but I should put a little asterisk on the end of that. The traditional banks are kind of seeing the light with that a little bit too now, so they're kind of pulling their reins back a little bit on some of that stuff. But we are more on the line of working with you to get you in business, to keep you in business, and for all intents and purposes, to hand you off to somebody else down the road. So, and we'll get in a lot more details of what we need, trust me.
So my name is Rich Gersh. I am director of WVU Innovations, which includes the Health Sciences Innovation Center and the Evansdale Innovation Center. There's resources and people there to help with technology commercialization for people that come up with ideas on campus that is university-owned intellectual properties that really doesn't apply so much on the student. My background, I'm from West Virginia. I went here as an undergrad, went to North Carolina for graduate school, and wound up working for a business accelerator and venture capital firm in Durham, North Carolina. And so that was my first sort of experience in a venture capital and startup space. And so we started a lot of interesting high-tech companies around the dawn of the tech bubble. Went on to work in regenerative medicine at a startup company out of Duke University. And that company was funded by angel investors, and spin-out was spun out with a $5 million venture capital investment. So I was involved in raising money and spinning out that company. We also funded our operations with SBIR and STTR grant awards, and we received about $10 million in that funding over the course of a few years. And that's a very powerful tool to start, or to either start companies with and actual operations with, or to fund operations and research, commercial research operations on companies that you've already started. Went on and had some more interesting venture capital experience in Manhattan. Was director of grants and development for a $400 million fund that was focused on investing in renewable and green energy. We had about 40 companies that we'd invested in all over the globe. My job there was to work with the companies to help them identify grant and federal subsidy opportunities that were available at the time. And in that position, we worked with and got about $100 million in non-dilutive funding to our 40 portfolio companies, funding and obligations for tax credits and that kind of thing. So a very powerful way to look at government opportunities and government resources to fund startup or sort of early stage companies. Came back to West Virginia and started working in what we're doing now at WVU on the innovation centers, on helping build and launch companies here. We have 8 that we've helped get off the ground. One of them is one of mine. I worked with a faculty member to spin out a company around stroke diagnostics, and I've worked with both Mike and Guy on helping fund that company. We've received at this point about $2.25 million in investment from high net worth individuals and investment funds. We're currently raising finishing out about another $800,000 to finish our seed round of funding, and we'll be doing a preferred A round of about $5 million that we're going to be launching in the next couple of months. And so, from the my perspective on this panel is somebody that's worked in small and medium-sized $400 million venture firms. I've started companies and raised money for companies to get them off the ground. I've raised money through a variety of mechanisms, from angel investors, high net worth individuals, to SBIR, STTR grants, to working with larger venture funds to get small rounds into companies that need to reach next stage of growth. The kinds of money that I have access to at WVU for seeding ventures or for pushing technology commercialization, I do have small pots of money, and we do make strategic investments out of that. If it's a piece of intellectual property that's being developed that's owned by WVU. And that typically happens if you're working on a startup company or working on an idea with a faculty member that's been that's part of WVU's portfolio. But lots of great experience on this panel of knowledgeable people, so I'm excited to hear about what you all are working on and the questions you might have for us.
Appreciate you including me in there.
I could suggest this, we do this a lot, this little roadshow. This is for your benefit, not ours. So if you have any questions, or if we use abbreviations or acronyms that you don't understand, raise your hand. It's what I always say is the first sign of maturity is, what are we talking about? Because we're really good at that. We use terminology, language no one understands. So don't be shy, ask your question. I thought maybe a good place to, what's that?
I said even us.
Yeah, we do the same thing. I thought maybe it would be best to start by just kind of giving you kind of an overview of where it starts.
What's the ecosystem
Yeah,
is.
what the ecosystem is. So I'll start and you guys
Jump in.
fill in here. So let's put this in a rhetorical way. What do you think is the best way to raise money if you want to start your own company?
Get somebody else to donate.
Get somebody to give you the money. Actually, it's pretty close. The best thing to do is do it yourself, okay? I mean, there's nothing better than being a sole proprietor, having your own money and starting your own business. You don't have to answer to anybody. There's no meetings, 5-hour meetings and stuff like that. You make your own decisions. It's great. A lot of people can't do that. So what do a lot of people do? They will sometimes think, well, I'll go to my bank to get a loan. Now, if those of you are interested in starting another bar here in Morgantown, you're not going to be able to come to one of us. We're not going to fund that. But if you go to a bank, what's the first thing they're going to ask you for if you want to borrow money? You know? Collateral. Yeah, banks are funny. Okay? They actually expect you to pay the money back after they give it to you.
We're stupid like that.
No, microloan, maybe not, and micro doesn't necessarily mean a small loan, but even the microloan program, the expectation is that if you're borrowing money, you're gonna somehow pay it back. And if you can't, they have some collateral. So if you're not willing to give up your car, or your house, or your dog, or your children, I mean, be aware of the fact that banks are like that. But after that, what you have is, there's a few places you can go. Certainly the university has some funding that you can tap into. Guy's organization, Innova, has some state funding, not enough. Won't get too personal here, but let's put it this way, the state of West Virginia doesn't do a whole lot for entrepreneurs from the state level. That's why we're here and
Right.
providing other entities. But between Innova and the Jobs
JIT.
Investment Trust, the West Virginia JIT was kind of like the state's venture capital fund, there is money available. And their role is very, very important because they're gonna get you early. They're gonna help you along with the SBDC. I saw Todd here earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, you're familiar with this thing called the Small Business Development Center? that's called? People help you do your business plan. So there are state resources that are available to entrepreneurs, so take advantage of that. This particular facility, which is just unbelievable how it's grown here over the last several years with Launch Lab, is a great place to get started. The law school can provide you some support. There are assets within B&E that can help you in creating your business and opportunities. So there are things here within WVU, within this community that are available to you. So it starts there. You can go borrow some money, you can go work with the state, so on and so forth. And then we can fill in these gaps later. Then you'll find there are things like angel groups or angels, high wealth individuals who like to take a chance on investing with you as an entrepreneur. Prior to that, you might hear the term friends and family investment. It's usually a friend or a member of the family who says, okay, here's 50 grand, I don't care, go have some fun. It's called friends, families, and usually use the term fools.
And I'll add that, be careful with that, because it can make Thanksgiving dinner very awkward.
Yes. Yes. The favorite line I like about friends and family money is, it's a really quick way to annoy your friends and alienate your family.
Yes.
But, you know, it's also,
It's an option.
It is an option, yes.
it's an option.
You've probably heard the term angels or angel groups. Kind of like the same thing, but it's a little less organized sometimes than a traditional venture capital fund. But it's usually high wealth individuals who like to help out in the community and take a shot at working with entrepreneurs, providing them the two things you need, which is funding, and I usually use the term adult supervision. Mentorship, which is rule number one for me, in terms of if you're gonna be an entrepreneur, find somebody who's gonna be a good mentor for you, that's not gonna just say, yeah, you're great, I love you, give you some tough love when necessary, and smack you around when necessary. So, these are the kind of things you could be looking at in terms of this whole subject, which is where do you get money? Banks, state, angels, friends and family, and ultimately venture capital. So that's kind of the big picture, but
Yeah, so there's about,
fill in.
Yeah, so our type of lending, there's three of us. There's Innova, West Virginia Jobs Investment Trust, and then over in Eastern Panhandle Natural Capital Investment Fund. And we work very closely with Mike's group. And I don't want to use the word incestuous, because it's not an incestuous relationship, but we're very close. You come down to us with an idea, and basically you're gonna sit around a table with West Virginia Jobs Investment Trust, Natural Capital Investment Fund. You're gonna pitch your idea, and again, we're gonna go through those three layers of analysis, see where you are in each and see what you need. But at the same time, we're gonna take a look and say, what is it gonna cost to finance this? Okay, and to get you to market ready, out into the marketplace, and then give you a little bit of runway to make sure that you can start, providing, capital back without impeding cash flow. And at this point in time, we try to bring Mike in early and his group to say, here's some interesting opportunities out there that you guys may want to look at either as a co-investor or once they're up and established, looking at, follow-on investment. We tranche it out and we try to figure out how much are we going to put in at one time. The adult supervision part is extremely important, because it's like a Rubik's Cube. You can't look at it as a linear process. I'm gonna structure the management, I'm gonna figure out the marketing, I'm gonna do the product development in a linear fashion. You're trying to do all of these things at one time, and trying to get all the colors aligned before you can come to us and we're gonna do an investment in you. If you can get the mentorship around you, and that's what we try to bring in, is where do we know other people that can come in and give you guidance in each of these specific areas, help you offset the costs so that you're most well positioned when it is time for investment. Rich had mentioned a couple of the companies that we kind of worked with him. I mean, it's kind of the same thing. You look at where are, the industry specialists that can come in and put their expertise in.
Yeah, so what Guy is getting at on that, to my ear, is what can we do before you go out to investors to help decrease the perceived risk that those investors see when they're looking at you as an entrepreneur? And that's the adult supervision, or the other mentors that have started companies or have worked in your space, or who understand the industry that you bring in as members of your team, that add confidence to the investor that the company is actually going to be able to execute on what it is, aspiring to do. Some of the companies that my group has helped launch out of WVU, we have one that a couple of brilliant faculty members with one of their students had a piece of sort of game-changing software, but they didn't have anyone with business expertise to come in and help them. So we identified an entrepreneur who had been very successful in the software space that fortunately is a West Virginian and lives in Morgantown. And so we were able to match him with this team so he could help shape where that company was going and the vision for the company and make them an investable prospect. And so putting that team together and coaching them to get to the point where they were investable and reasonable introduction into Guy's funds and his additional mentorship. partnership we can provide to them. And so, helping where we work and where Launch Lab works and where a lot of other resources for at the university level work to help you is to help you think about what kind of team needs to come together around your idea or around your forming business to where it decreases the risk to the investors that are going to come in next to help add fuel to your business. And money really is fuel. It is the rocket fuel that gets you off the ground, and the investors want to make sure that you have enough, but not so much that you get fat. Money is both fuel and poison. How about that? And I think that
Yeah.
Mike has some real solid thoughts about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's what, before you get to the venture capital phase, we want you to vet your issues. Find out who the competition is. You know, Nancy, when she was giving her, would you have 15 different things you needed? I mean, those are things you should, for those of you who saw the previous presentation, you need to be paying attention to. There's a lot of things that go into trying to be an entrepreneur. But it's the best thing you can do. If you have that entrepreneurial thing, that gene, go for it. Don't be afraid. When this Launch Lab got started many years ago, we try to encourage, especially the students, to come forward with your ideas, even if it's not the greatest idea. Just try it. In fact, one of my rules of thumb with some entrepreneurs is that I want you to go out and fail first before you come and see me. Because you gain the experience from them. There's nothing wrong with it. How many of you ever have participated in the WVU, was it College Business Plan competition? Any of you have done that? Okay, so you've had some experience doing that. I think it's great. Even if you don't make it, just going through the process, because you'll learn along the way all the things you need to know about. And historically, what we've found over the years with entrepreneurs is that most of you will focus on what I call the thing. I got this great idea, it's a thing. It's the software, it's a device, it's some product. But almost every one of you doesn't have the breadth of experience in the other areas that you tend to forget about, like, do I need legal help? Do I need accounting help? Okay? You just went through an hour and a half, 2 hours learning about copyrights and patents. And these are the things that most entrepreneurs say, no, I'm focused on the thing. I got this great thing, okay? But there's so much other things around the business that you really have to know. And that's where you get some help from Guy's organization, JIT, from Rich here at the university, to kind of fill in those gaps. At least understand what the questions are, so that you can deal with these issues when they come about. Okay? So just be aware of all those things and developing your ideas. Being an entrepreneur is really hard. You're gonna fail most of the time. It's okay. Usual example of that is WD-40. Took them 39 times to get it right. I think that's true. I made that up.
It actually is. The most disturbing one, Mike, is preparation H. Right, so A through G, I mean, good grief, we didn't want to be part of that system.
That's a better one.
Let's try that again.
Too far on that one, Rich, but okay. Guys, I want to ask you, all three of you, this question. I'm asking on the behest of you all here. What is the difference between venture capital angels and us bad guys, the bankers?
Well, the biggest difference, of course, is that you are loaning money to the entrepreneur and expect to get that back, perhaps with interest. Most of the time, and it's true also in terms of the things that guys do, because let's break it down a little bit. A lot of times you get the loan. The other thing that most of the time you will be looking at is what we call a convertible note, which is in the form of a loan. We will actually loan you money at a certain interest rate and expect to get that money back in some time, usually 2 to 3 year period. What happens after that is that loan can either be paid back to the investor, or now we're going to get a little deeper, it can be converted into equity, into stock ownership, and usually into a preferred equity. And that's where things get a little more complicated. And that's what venture capitalists are looking for, even angel investors are looking not to just get their money back at 8% interest, But to convert that particular note after the company has gotten off the ground to a substantial equity position or ownership position in the company. That's kind of where they think it's a little more complicated.
Yeah, so
That's all.
kind of to simplify, you know, if you come into us, we do all the analysis and we figure, get you off the ground, give you a little comfort level, $200,000. So we're gonna tell you $200,000 every 2 years at 8%. Within that 2 years, Mike's group comes in, makes another investment in you, we create a valuation of the company now. And say, based on what has been invested, the company is now worth X. The option is do you take the $200,000 with the accrued interest and pay us back, or do we take it and ask you to pay us back? Or do we take that and say, we're going to invest it in your company into equity at probably a 20% discount? And so when we write the loan up, it's basically gonna be $200,000, 2 years, 8%, or warrants for 80% equity conversion. And so we kind of want to ride along with you as you grow. And what that does to you, the benefit there is you're not having to pay us back, so it eases up your cash flow. Basically, you're giving up some equity, but you're retaining the cash to keep moving forward along with the new investment that was made.
You know, if you all watch Shark Tank all the time, you always hear people come in, I'm offering 15% of my company for $200,000. That's based on what they call a valuation.
Right.
Now, you watch TV like that, that is just complete entertainment. This doesn't work that way in the real world, trust me. But the whole issue about what the valuation of a company, what is a company worth, is not really a science, folks. There's a lot of art to it. And a lot of it's determined by a lot of things. Part of it is the experience of the entrepreneur, what the investor thinks the value of that company is. A lot of it is just a judgment by the investor, what that investor thinks that company is worth. You may think it's worth $10 million, but the investor might say, no, I think it's pretty close to $2 million. But I will tell you through experience, having done this for a long time, there are investors that will invest in a company with somebody walks in with a 10-page PowerPoint slide presentation and say, this is worth $10 million. Somebody else can come in and is actually cash flowing positively, and the company might be worth less. So there is a lot of art to the determination of the valuation. If you watch Shark Tank, it's crazy to see some of the people come in there and say, I'm offering, you can buy 10% of my company for $2 million. And then they start the calculation and figure out what they perceive the value of the company is. This is why we use what's called convertible notes. It's because we're not smart enough at this point in time in the early stage of investing to know what the value of the company is. That gets determined later on when a bona fide venture capitalist or private equity company comes in and said, we've done our due diligence, we've studied this thing, we understand it, and we think this company is now worth $5 million. So I'm going to offer you $1 million for 20% of that company. That's where you get that terminology on Shark Tank. That's based on a little bit more science, because it's either a real product, there's cash flow, the management team has gotten bigger and better, there's very little competition, or other factors that determine what the investor believes the value of. Make sense?
The above. The other thing too, the difference between us and banks is we're a little forgiving. We're not gonna let you walk away, but we understand this is a startup, You're basically getting out there and you are creating something and going out into the marketplace. Everything isn't gonna go according to flow. There's gonna be hiccups in there. 2 years are gonna come, you're not gonna make the sales projections that you anticipate. All right, let's go back and let's rewrite the loan. And let's put a little flexibility in it. And so we're not gonna come take the car to the house, take the child. We're gonna work with you to give you the room that you need to grow.
And one thing is, different types of companies will approach financing differently. And so, like we were talking about earlier, if you're a bar or a pizza shop, a venture capital investor is not really going to be interested in investing.
Right.
And that's a Main Street type of business. So VCs don't typically invest in Main Street businesses. VCs are interested in businesses that are entering a world competitive market and have a scalable technology that needs to be competitive on a world stage.
In that that realm, what about like someone that pitched you McDonald's? Before it opened. It's a Main Street business, but it's been infinitely scaled. So it has a lot of fixed capital. There's
But-
lots of,
And in the beginning, it was one store.
but in the beginning it was one store.
And he actually debt financed a solid portion of that. Okay, so that McDonald's might not be the best example.
Well, I'm just looking at
But I
a brick
just-
and mortar entity
Right.
that has fixed capital, relatively high fixed capital, but potential for lots of growth. That seems to me there's like, it's actually not just, there's a gray area there too.
Historically, venture capitalists wouldn't look at those things because that would be a bankable thing because it has an asset. Banks are.
Brick and mortar aspects of it, yes.
Venture capital is gonna look more like what you see around here, which is some cool software technology, some medical device and things of that nature, is more in line with venture capitalism.
Yeah,
As opposed to brick and mortar.
like what Rich was just saying, it can get very industry specific. The differences between bankable deals and venture capital deals. If you are talking a brick and mortar type of establishment, you're looking at debt financing more than anything
Okay.
at the bank. But in the same sense, even though you might have software, it doesn't mean the bank won't talk to you. It means, you got multiple options now. But if you are a biometric thing, I don't even know where to go with that, but honestly, you more likely are talking to these gentlemen. I mean, that's, cause you're gonna walk into the loan officer and sit down in front of his desk and say, hey, I got this great little gadget that's gonna be able to determine your blood sugar at a much faster rate and do all these other things. They're gonna be like, nice talking to you,
No.
here's the door.
The question then from the bank officer is, do you have a paid for house?
Yeah.
If yes, then
How-
I
yeah, do you have a
I got
mortgage on
loan
your
for you.
home?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's, our first thing is, just that, from a bank is, how are you paying me back?
Yeah.
That's our very first question. Is it, and then we'll look at the collateral, I mean, Mike said the collateral piece earlier, but honestly it's cash flow. On banks, cash flow is king. The ability to pay us back, that's our first and foremost thing, because we're charging you interest. That's the only way the bank makes money, is to charge interest. So you having that ability to pay us back, that's the attractive piece of it to us.
See, but there's a risk-reward continuum here, as you can see, right? The banks are very risk-averse. They don't like to lose money. They're very, quote, conservative. On the venture capital side, we're less conservative. Because most venture capitalists look at it and say, I'm looking for a 10 or 20x return on my money. So that's pretty aggressive, right? As opposed to a 5 or 6% return on your money if you get that in your banks, for example. So that's where the differences come about as well. And what that also means that there are a lot of failures that are made by venture capitalists. The rule is usually if you make 10 investments, you might have 1 or 2 home runs and maybe have a couple of, ground rule doubles in the middle there, but 4 or 5 of them are probably gonna fail. Okay? But that's the expectation. If you get a 10 to 20x return on that grand slam home run, it makes up for the portfolio that you invest in, and that's what most venture capitalists do. Spread it.
Banks don't like the swing and miss mentality. We're home run, period. Okay, I'm joking about that, but a lot of places are like that, and that's where, what you walk into our offices with is literally going to determine, right from the start, is this something we want to get involved with? And then we're going to ask that question that Rich said, is your house free and clear? Or do you have other assets that we can hold as collateral? And then we look at a way to package it to give you money on a fixed term or variable term for a specific amount of time frame. You have 5 years to pay this loan back. It's not that there's not an interest-only period here. It's like you start 30 days from now, start paying me back on this loan. So there's a big difference as well too. With the bank, it is a loan. You are paying this back.
And conceptually, one of the really interesting things on working with angel investors or with venture firms or with with Nova and for funds like that, is the money that comes in there is basically shoulder to shoulder with you, because there isn't. The collateral is your idea. The collateral is the product or the service that you're developing. And the people that are going to work with you are the people that are investing in. Banks have it's right out of the gate is almost always a sure thing for the bank that they will get their money back, because there's a lien against some asset that is of value. They're going to be able-
liquid asset.
They're going to be able to extract that value from if you don't pay the money back. And so the conversation with a bank is, where's my money? And if my money is not paid on time, I will take your house and I will sell it. Guy can't take your house, and neither can mine. The only thing they can do is roll up, if you had a rough patch, they have to roll up their sleeves and figure out a way forward, because they've sunk a bunch of money into you. And so there's great benefits in working with smart invested investors that basically your futures and your financial futures are tied at the hip. There's also detractors. The bank's probably not going to call you up and ask how progress is going on the technology that you're developing, because they don't care. They're going to take your house. Mike cares a lot. You're going to have a conversation with
Well,
Mike
you
or
guys
with Guy.
really paint me as a bad guy.
Tim's an awesome guy.
Man,
But it's
why am
different.
I here?
It's different funding for different purposes. And for cash flow businesses and Main Street businesses. Or if you have that piece of software that's generating out, $10,000 a month, and you have, orders, and you have good consistent revenue, banks will finance it. If you have, a couple of years worth of revenue you can show, and you crank out your tax returns, yeah, I'm a great business, I'm making money. I borrowed money as a biotech company when I had my company. It still exists, but the company that I was with and helped found and run in North Carolina. But we were making a bunch of money, and we needed defined set of funds for a specific purpose. And it was fill out the paperwork and put the lien against the assets and pay it back.
Let me be clear about one thing here. I mean, we are all in this together. Our goals are aligned.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
The bank wants you to be successful and get their money back. They want you to be a customer for a long time and continue to work with the banks. We're the same way. If you win, we win. Now, the venture capital community is gonna take a piece of your company. But, for you, the entrepreneur, a small percentage or a very large number is better than a large percentage of nothing. Okay, and that's how this particular game is played. The real question is, how do we all make money on this thing if you're an entrepreneur? Most of you who are entrepreneurs have an idea, whether it's a software system come up, a new app that no one's thought about, some device of some sort. Ultimately, the end game is what they call liquidity. How do I sell this off to somebody else if it's stock, so that I can get my money out of this deal? And that's what we all are striving for in this investment world. Okay? I want to make sure that's clear. But how do you get liquidity? Well, in the quote good old days, and I would say the good old days for those of you who weren't born yet, in the 80s and 90s, there was these things called IPOs, initial public offerings, where the stock market would basically say, I want to buy that company. They'll put money into that company, and things coming back a little bit, but it's few and far between. So what we look for as venture capitalists and investors is someone who either is a public company or will pay cash for your company, for your idea, at a premium. And that's what the end game is all about. It's to get you rich, to get us rich too, but the entrepreneur to be successful and make a lot of money. And then my rule of thumb is then you gotta pay it back. I don't mean pay it back in money. You gotta find the next entrepreneur. And that's what this WVU ecosystem is all about too, that we're all together in. Is that to try to encourage you as the next generation of entrepreneurs to create these companies, right? But the university, I'm not a university person, but it's very selfish, because if we know we create a whole bunch of multimillionaires, guess what you're gonna do with some of that money? Hopefully we get it back to the university. And that's a great ecosystem. It worked for Stanford, it's worked for Harvard. There's no reason it can't continue to work here at WVU. So this is really an important thing for all of us as we try to improve life here in West Virginia, which is what all of us hopefully are all about. For you who are, how many of you are native West Virginians? Not that many of you. But those of you who have come here to WVU, or come here to Morgantown, we want you to stay here. We don't want you to take the education you get here at WVU and leave and go to sunny California. We want you to
That's what
create
we want to do
companies
when
there.
we retire. You guys stay here.
We want you to create companies, we want you to raise your kids here, we want to improve the life here in the greatest place in the world to live. That's the whole goal, right? Who's with me on this one? I feel like Animal House here. But that is the goal.
You know, you look at us and you look at JIT, you know, one of the restrictions on our money is you have to be a West Virginia-based company. So what we're gonna do is also try to help you find all of the resources you need to set everything up you need here and be successful. Again, as we start doing that more and more and more, like Mike's talking about, you're starting to create clusters. And now we're starting to build up the industry and the opportunities for the next generation coming along. And you guys can be the mentors to that generation.
Questions? Fire away.
What are your guys' thoughts on crowdfunding accounts?
Somebody else
Um,
take that one.
Yeah, I can jump into that too.
Yeah, and then you start.
Well,
Mine can be bad.
I mean, legislation has passed, there is legislation that has been passed, so it is out there, but no one has set up the infrastructure. There are people that are looking at it, and so maybe within the next year or so, you know, West Virginia crowdfunding will be available. Overall crowdfunding,
There's a place for it. I still think that a good entrepreneur is gonna need a team around him, and I think that, and I don't mean to be, I didn't wanna use the term adult supervision in a negative way, that's just an expression I guess. But I mean, just to have people around with experience means a lot, I think, to entrepreneurs. And much more, in many cases, even more valuable than the money itself. Yeah,
so, yeah.
It is more valuable than money itself. You have to have the money, but the been there, done that experience gives investors, partners, collaborators a high level of comfort, because as much as you think VCs are big old risk takers, they aren't. Their whole job is to minimize the risk, and the way that they do that is by adding experience. Picking good teams, picking good technologies, adding experience, minimize the risk and likelihood of everybody getting rich from the investment that happens.
One of the things we look at now, and it's based on past experience, Mike was, citing out some stats, of those companies that we have trouble with right now, there's two in particular that have phenomenal products, absolutely phenomenal. You take one short, you're gonna jump up and down. But it was a singular individual that had a really good game plan, and we bought in and we trunched investment into it. But again, too many moving pieces. We now require that we have a board seat. But again, we see you every quarter, and then we turn our back and work with the 24 companies that are still coming up the pipeline, and we come back 3 months later and this wasn't done, or this was missed, or this wasn't completed, and now things have gone off kilter. It's putting the team together, and we're looking to start doing that earlier so that you have that around you as you go out into the marketplace. And again, try to enhance the propensity for success.
Yeah, I am not a fan of crowdfunding, not because I'm the bank guy here, but I'm tying in with what they were saying. I have seen with folks who just want to go do the crowdfunding that they do not worry about the mentorship, the management team, if you will, and it's that expertise, the expertise factor, excuse me. It's just, at times, they think it's too easy. I'll just get the money and go with it, and they do not plan. That's the bottom line. There is no plan. And that's where everybody gets in trouble, the whole thing. A successful business plan, yes, as a bank, we need a business plan and everything. But it does more than just help you get money. It is your yellow brick road. That's the plan. And when you, with the crowdfunding thing, it seems like it's too easy to get it, and they don't pay attention to their plan, and they don't worry about getting that extra help, getting the mentor piece of, getting the management team put together. And that's why I'm not a fan of the crowdfunding. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but technically I am. But yeah, yeah, I'm on the fence. It has a place. I don't think it's at the start of your project. It might be after you get yourself established, and then you want to like do a little spin-off or something. Somewhere in that range it might fit in, but from a startup phase, no, there's too many other possibilities for you to look at than crowdfunding. And it's not a guarantee you're going to get it either. You might, you could put in and say, hey, I'm looking for 20,000. What happens if you only get 2? What do you do then? So from the bank's perspective, when you look at your plan and you have crowdfunding as a major proponent to your funding source, it's going to scare the crap out of us.
Tell you one thing, the more I go around the community and our community that we focus on is obviously all of West Virginia and that bedroom community up north, called Pittsburgh. It's a bedroom community of Morgantown, what I call it. And you look at the card, I am more excited about some of the young people that I meet and the ideas that I hear every single day. It's amazing, just blows me away. Never thought of that one. Ooh, that's a good one. And a lot of it is not just finding a better mousetrap. There's some really good creativity going on, and things change so quickly in this space. You know, for an old guy like me, just watching technology change, and I've been in technology my whole career, the acceleration and trajectory is straight up. It used to be like this. It's like, who would have thought that you could have an Uber, which is not a taxi cab company, it's a software company. Who knew? Or Airbnb, or these types of companies. Who thought you could do stuff like that? That's how creative they are. Every single day I see that. Here at WVU, I just want you guys to know that there are resources here within your own community. If you're a real entrepreneur, you will find them. And a good idea will always find money. Always.
Yeah.
But you've got to have that thing, that entrepreneur thing that says, I'm going to work half a day, which is at least 12 hours, right? Half a day. You're going to work hard. You're not going to remember what your kids' names are when somebody asks you. But you think about that. Because you could be focusing on so much on being an entrepreneur. That's part of the deal. Sorry. Okay. That's one of the questions I always ask. What did you have for dinner last night? Oh, guy knows right away. I forget it. If you remember what you ate yesterday, it's like not good. Because I wanted you. I don't care what you ate. You to be focusing on what you're doing as an entrepreneur, 24/7. If you don't have that, I think it's going to be hard to be successful.
Owning a business is a 24/7, 365 job.
Yeah.
Period. I mean, not just entrepreneur, but owning a business. Now, does being a business owner make you an entrepreneur? No. Do entrepreneurs make the best business owners? No. In my opinion, not always. Unless of course your name's Bill Gates, and that's a little bit different. But with an entrepreneur, yeah, you're eating, breathing, living this on a 24/7, 365 basis. And as a business owner, your liability does not quit when you go home. It's always there.
And I want to pressure test the idea that a good idea always finds money. That's not always the case, and here's why. In the United States, 25% of every single dollar put into research and development companies or research and development projects in universities and in companies lands in San Francisco and Boston. 25% of every single dollar. 75% is the rest of the country spread around the place. 75% of every venture capital and startup dollar is in San Francisco and Boston. What happens in heartland states like West Virginia? There's much lower access to capital or smart people that know how to access capital. And West Virginia didn't have sort of connected networks of investors before Mike came in and helped put together the first. And so access to capital in a lot of places, and it's different now. It's
Yeah.
definitely different.
It's changed. in the
It's
last
changed
few years.
significantly. But
Rich is right.
But, you know, when you start looking at everything that's not Boston, San Francisco, San Diego, and there's other areas that have bright spots. Access to capital is difficult, and so a good idea with a motivated investor and the right mentor will find capital, but not necessarily just a good idea and somebody that's got no connections.
It's a nice point too about the passion. I mean, we had a couple of people that come in with presentations that had relatively good ideas, and, you know, as we talked afterwards, it was, you know, a pivot here and a twist there. And if we can find somebody that can come in and, you know, smooth it out and make it move this way, that could be a potential opportunity. But what sold us to even take that effort and move forward with it was, oh my God, these people are so passionate about it that they are gonna give 24/7, 365 if we help them to move it. And we've taken on a couple that, you know, really needed some substantial work, but it was the people that were behind it that really sold it. So, you know, we can tell if you've got that passion, and that's key.
You previously talked about the 3 layers of analysis or for evaluation of a startup. Could you speak more on that and what your
I mean,
organization?
basically, it's just, you know, the initial overview when you come in is, how are you structured? You know, basically, who all's involved? You know, what is your background? What's your experience? Where did you get the idea? How did you get the idea? Where are you as far as professional service needs? You know, have you done a complete market analysis? You know, we're gonna wanna do a technology evaluation on you. We've got a group that will have to do that. You know, as we're talking about what the market opportunity looks like, have you done sales forecasts? What are your cost of goods? Have you identified manufacturers? All of those factors. We can bring people in around the state or around the country and use some grant funding that we have to help offset the costs. Where are you in the product development? What is it you're developing? Is it a service? Is it, you know, like an app? Is it a product itself? What help do you need in developing it? You know, we work with groups within the state, we work with groups in the region, groups across the country. We'll help you develop the product and get it to prototype stage. And again, we've got some grant funds that can help offset those costs. But again, it's finding out what exactly do you have, what do you need, how can we move it further, faster? And, you know, a lot of that is building in efficiency into it. So if we can get you out into the marketplace quicker and more efficiently with the best suppliers at each stage, that's key.
When, question for you, Mike, when entrepreneurs are thinking about sort of company structure, is there a structure for that company, LLC, C Corp, sole proprietorship? Is there a structure that looks better to a venture investor versus a bank versus a?
For the venture capital world, it's a little complicated here, and I'll defer to Nancy to probably add some comments.
Yes,
We look for, you have a couple of options. You can set up an LLC and look at liability companies. For we venture capitalists, we prefer a C Corp, it's called a C Corp, because on the back end of that, there's a lot less aggravation as it relates to tax returns and things of that nature. That's what we always encourage our companies, to set yourself up as a Delaware corporation, right from the beginning, what we call a C Corp. You know about that, Google that. Just to keep it simple. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, the problem with the C Corp is you run into the double taxation.
Yeah.
So you can actually early stage form as a C Corp and then later apply to be treated as an S Corp for tax purposes, and you avoid the double taxation, but I think so. The other thing is sometimes when you look at an LLC and there's numerous members, what I like to look at is how have the members protected or not their individual interests? And so that's in an operating agreement. And if that's not real clear to me, it makes me nervous. From just a liability, you know, you want, when there's more than one member or manager, you wanna make sure, because everyone brings their own strengths. Well, when that membership interest is not well defined, and let's say someone wants to get out or sell, you know, if that's not very well defined in the operating agreement, I think you're going to possibly scare a potential investor. If it's really well drafted and clear how the membership interests will be recognized and how one member may buy another out with the first option, and it's pretty clear, I think, you know, even an LLC can be enticing to an investor, but yeah, the C Corp is definitely the simpler,
For those of
with
you
the
just
understanding
starting
that you
out,
have the tax
especially
issue.
students, I would certainly go over to the law school and
Right.
talk to some of the folks over there, get started that
But
way.
these are the things we'll review, and again, we can help have drafted up and provide some grant funding to help also.
So you're saying those things not necessarily don't need to be made up before coming to see over again?
Same with the bank. You don't really have to have your structure in place. You have to have it in order for me to give you money.
Right.
To close the deal. But then, so the difference from the lending standpoint is we don't really care what your legal structure is to a degree, other than how many, I mean, if there's more than one person involved, it's not a sole proprietorship, that's just the bottom line. And we're gonna look at it from the standpoint of whoever's got 20% or more ownership in the business is signing on the dotted line. And if you have 10% stake, doesn't mean you're getting out of it, we can make you a guarantor on the deal. So, and kind of talking with the guarantor piece, this is where the banks are a lot more fun. Every loan that you go to, there is a personal guarantee attached to it. Even if it's a business loan, you are personally liable for it. There is no such thing as a non-recourse loan, which means that, you know, your personal liability is there. And it's going back to the collateral piece that, yes, we will take your house, but we will avoid that as all possible. I mean, we're not that mean.
No.
But your dog, yes, no. So when you go to the bank, like I said, you have to have that in your head of what you're going to be, because we need to know that's going to help us to structure the deal and who all the players are going to be on that deal. So, and then, as I said, you are also personally going to be guaranteeing the loan as well. Even though the business, on a venture side, Mike mentioned earlier, you know, you occasionally get those home runs and a lot of double plays and so forth. We don't care if it's a failure. Whoever signed on a note is still paying on this thing. You're still liable for it until that balance says zero. That's the bad thing here. So that's why you will always see a personal guarantee now. The old savings and loan fiasco, probably before some of you were born.
That's the prison.
Yeah, that's where it all started, because they started, you know, and then you got the junk bonds, but that's a whole different seminar. That personal guarantee is there for the bank, that, you know, you can't get this loan, go to Vegas, and then leave. You know, don't pay us back. No, we're going to get it in some form or fashion. So you have that risk aversion, as Mike mentioned in the beginning there a little bit. That's where a lot of that comes into play. So the legal structure side of it has to be not necessarily finalized when you meet with us, but talked about, so we know who all is going to be signing on the dotted line.
Best advice I can give most of you is, if you do have an idea, do your homework. Come prepared when you talk to us. We can usually smell if it's a good idea or bad idea. Understand your competition. Okay, understand the market. Understand what your needs are going to be. Understand what your financial needs are going to be specifically. And Nancy, if you should give these guys a copy of, if they haven't already got it, your 15 things to do.
All of the
There's a lot of stuff that you should be prepared for,
organizational piece.
because we don't want our time wasted, and we don't want to waste your time. Sometimes it's very hard for venture capitalists or people giving you money to tell you your baby's ugly. But there's a rule of thumb that basically says, if you think something's a bad idea, I think most people would appreciate the fact that you tell them that this is a terrible idea and don't waste your time. then give them a soft yes and let them continue to go and try to do something, and you know ultimately it's gonna fail. I've been on both sides of that, trust me. I'd rather somebody kick me out and say, get lost, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, than say, oh, we'll get back to you, get back to me in a couple of weeks, you know, we'll talk about it some more. So wishy-washy yes, that really is not necessarily a good thing.
And banks are very good at that wishy-washy, yes. You'll meet with them and then, you know, I'll get back with you, and 2 months later, you still haven't heard. That's kind of their way of saying thanks but no thanks. There's too much paperwork involved for some of them to do a true denial for you, so that's what happens a lot. So if you are going to talk to a bank, you gotta stay with them, because we deal a lot with character-based lending. Character is you. It's not just your credit score, it's not what collateral you have, it's you. What expertise do you have? If you don't have it all, are you bringing that mentorship, those partners, managing the pieces to it? The idea in itself, the market, that is huge with lending, because just because you say people, you know, I will build it, they will come, that don't work with us. I mean, banks are a little bit, you know, I'm gonna say weird again, it's the best way to put it. You have to prove to us that it's going to make money. And I don't mean money from the standpoint of equity, I'm talking cash, because that's what pays us back. So your job is to explain to the bank, here it is. This is what I'm bringing to this table. This is who else I'm bringing along with me if that is there. And then you're gonna give me financials out the wazoo to show to us that, hey, I'm gonna make money with this, and I'm willing to stake X to get to Y.
One thing, when approaching funders and thinking about your idea, there's a couple of things to consider here. Is you should be in love with the problem as opposed to your solution. And thinking about your company, your idea, what you're doing to put together all of this, there's a sort of a 4-quadrant kind of framework that I think of when putting together pitches or coaching entrepreneurs, and this is sort of even ahead of the business model canvas that it was up here, but it's over there. Even ahead of that, and it's NABC, needs, assessment, benefits/costs, and competition. And so what is the need? Have you correctly identified the need that you think needs to be addressed? And so that's the problem statement. The benefits, what benefit is your solution to this need? Needs assessment. So assessing the need. So you have the need, and how are you addressing it? What are you addressing that need with, and doing it? The benefits that you're going, and the costs, and then who's the competition that's out there? But correctly addressing what the need is, that's the first real question. Because if you're not correctly addressing and thinking about the needs out there that you're doing, that you're addressing, then everything else changes.
How do you, the venture guys, feel when there's no direct competitor, no direct competition? Because you're dealing with a little bit more, you know, technology-based stuff that might not be out there right now.
There's always
I
competition.
was gonna say,
Doing nothing is competition.
Yeah.
sometimes I look at it from the perspective of somebody who'll come in and I'll immediately say to them, "Heck, I will almost guarantee you there's a guy in California or a guy in Boston with the same idea you got, somewhere. I've never seen a situation, I don't think yet. Now, maybe when Bill Gates started Microsoft, there was no competition. Or when Google started, there wasn't a whole lot of search engines out there. Maybe there's examples of that, but most of the time, somebody's thought about it. And you gotta dig deep to find out. Well, the word we usually use in the technology world is the word disruptive technology. You may have heard that before. How is this gonna change the world? Why is this different? So you look for differentiation, which is kind of like, where maybe where the competition is. But appreciate what Rich just said. You've really got to understand what the need is. You really have to, what am I trying to fix here? What am I trying to solve? And that's really difficult. Really difficult. be very clear and be all in on that. Don't be don't be a solution looking for a problem, or the other way around. You really, sometimes to me, that's the best way. I've got a great thing, I don't know what to do with it. Maybe a lot of companies have started that way. That doesn't always work either. So,
Who's the customer? You got the great thing,
yeah,
who's buying?
Who's gonna buy it?
Right, and to figure that out, you have to figure out where the need is. And so your solution might be the best unicorn ever created.
Oh, I don't wanna hear that. I literally was just gonna say that. Do not tell me that you're gonna have the best of whatever, cause I've heard it.
Right, and never come in and say, if I only got 1% of the
I'm sorry.
market.
That's the other one.
How many times have you heard
Yeah,
that one?
if I only get 1%.
It's got, the market is, the market is $1 billion, and if I only got 1%, oh, wow, I'm sorry,
I have a question for the bank.
Yeah.
You said you want to see the cash, so you can guarantee your money back. But if someone comes to you, like us, I don't think any of us own a house or have something to offer to them, except an idea.
Right.
So why should I come to
Very,
you?
very good point.
And if I'm making the cash, why should I come and ask you for money? I'm making cash
Well,
already.
here's my personal piece on the cash side first. I am a very strong proponent of using somebody else's money. And what I mean by that is, keep your cash as your rainy day fund, because stuff changes on a daily basis, okay? Personal, business, you know, stuff happens. I won't use the actual acronym on that, but if on the first part of your piece, we're talking about the cash, it's cash flow. It's not necessarily that you have to have cash to get cash, even though some banks do require a 20% equity injection when you talk to them. But like for my fund, as an example, on the microloan, we look for skin in the game. And sometimes that is, yes, you put some equity into it, but it's also more of the character-based side of things. So I'm a little bit different, as I said in the beginning, than your traditional banks. But taking that a step further, yes, 90% of the time, people don't have a lot of stuff on the collateral side. So we have other means of looking at stuff. If mom and dad were interested in signing as a co-signer, as a guarantor on the note, something of that nature, or if your other partner that you're bringing in has some assets, we can look at a variety of different ways. Historically, on the microloan side, on the collateral piece, we are at best getting a 1-to-1 ratio for dollar lent out to dollar collateral to back it. Because you also have to realize when you get a bank loan, if you're buying something, equipment in particular, we're holding that as collateral too. So the stuff that you're purchasing with this, we're holding as collateral. Working capital, which is just basic cash, that's where you run into some obstacles with the collateral standpoint of it. That's where we're going to look a little bit more stringent on the credit. We're going to look a lot stringently more on the character side of things. Because microloan, we focus on 3 of those C's: character, credit, collateral. You can have some credit shortfall, you can have some collateral shortfall, but you better not have a character shortfall. So I'm kind of getting to a long answer to your question here, I'm sorry, but we find different ways of manipulating it, for lack of a better word here, to make it work. If you have your own cash, I'm not going to tell you don't use your own money. As Mike mentioned in the very beginning, self-financing your own thing is the easiest way to do it. But say you need $50,000 to buy a new piece of equipment, whatever it may be, CNC machine, etc. Okay, you buy that machine, it breaks within a week of you operating it. You've already spent all your cash. What do you do now? This is coming back to the proponent of other people's money. I like the aspect of getting a business loan or some form of other financing, keeping your cash as that rainy day fund, as that working capital aspect of things. Because as I mentioned, with working capital, it's harder to fund for us. So if you're using your own cash for operating expenses versus the equipment needs from the loan standpoint of things here, folks, that's better for you because we have that collateral piece with that piece of equipment. It makes it a little bit easier if you don't have a lot to bring in the beginning. Okay, does that kind of make sense the way I'm wording it? I know I went a long way about it,
But from what I understood, you need something already exist, like an existing business, existing equipment, whatever. You need something to see.
That's what I'm saying.
If there is no mom and dad to sign as a co-signer or whatever.
That's kind of where I was saying, it depends on the situation. If you're asking for $1 million, yeah, it's gonna be a lot harder, but on the microloan side of things, that's where, you know, if you go talk to the bank, they will refer you to us because we can work more with those types of things than they can. They have much greater requirements from the collateral standpoint and that equity injection standpoint than as the microlender that we have. If you don't have anything, we're looking at the use of funds. What are you using the money for? We're looking at you, the character side of it more. And that's where we have to sell it a little bit harder. It does make it a little bit tougher when you have nothing to put into the deal yourself, but it doesn't kill the deal. We gotta talk a little more about stuff.
Mr. Mike, I have another question for you. I mean, when you said, okay, come to us and tell us the idea, and we will tell you if you have to go further. Do you want us to come to you and talk to you after we go through the 15 steps with Nancy, or I don't know, the 15 presentation thing you said, or just before?
I think this is a courtesy. I think if you're gonna come to talk to anybody and ask them for money, whether it's the bank or Nova or JIT or venture capital or Rich, be prepared. And I think that's the responsibility of the entrepreneur. Just, you know, unless it's a very, very early thing and there's a personal thing there, just got a general idea of, you know, would you like to, we could meet you for 15 minutes and just talk about it. But if you're really looking seriously for money, then I think it's the obligation of the entrepreneur to be prepared as possible to explain what they want.
Business plan.
And be able to articulate that as clear as possible.
You guys might not have that business plan requirement as strong as the bank does, but you are definitely going to need it eventually, for sure, because that's part of the prospectus of these guys that you're making your decisions on. We totally make our decision off of your business plan and financials. So if you're coming to talk to any of us, have a plan in place. I mean, it doesn't have to be a fully completed, because we're going to tell you it's weekend. There's certain things we want to tell you to work on and fix and so forth. But if you just kind of walk in our offices, plop down and hand us a napkin and say, here's my idea, that's rocking a hard place for a lot of stuff. But if you come in and have a plan in place, like I said, it doesn't have to be fully completed. You might have done some, you know, a little bit of a marketing strategy and some things of that nature. You're giving us some teeth to look at. I keep bringing up the word character here, folks. That's literally the first sign of the character piece to us, that you're serious about this. You know what you're doing. So that's one of those light bulbs that are clicking off in our head, saying, hey, this guy's got some of this stuff together here. Now we got to take it to that next level.
Where our group works with entrepreneurs and where Launch Lab works with entrepreneurs is helping prepare you to have those conversations. Right? So if I get an email from any one of you, or if Carrie or Launch Lab gets an email from any one of you and says, I've got this idea, I'd like to talk about it. That's part of why we're here, to sit down and talk about it and help you think through what an approach might be, what the plan might be. Are you correctly addressing what the needs are in the space? Do you have the right story together? Can we put together a reasonable pitch deck and make an introduction to somebody that can actually make a judgment on whether we want to invest, or we need to be kicked back to our side and say, okay, we need to team up a little bit more. But where my background and experience on working with venture funds, raising money from venture funds, borrowing money from banks, running companies, that's the lens that I bring to helping you guys put together that story, so you're ready to talk to the people that can actually write the check. And we don't always get it right, but we work really closely with people with these guys here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're all in the same boat. We might do different things. You might talk to me, and I can say point blank, says, this is above us. I'm going to get you with Guy or Mike or Rich. Our job is simple in my mind. I don't know how they. I don't care who does it as long as somebody does. Is my mentality with it. It might be a bankable deal, a finance type of piece. It might be a venture deal. Our job, along with Launch Lab and Small Business Development Center knows, is to get you to the right tool.
One last comment about cash. When you become an entrepreneur, you've got to preserve as much of that as you possibly can. The last thing we want to see you do is have high, ridiculous salaries or open up the Taj Mahal and buy a new car. No. It's the most important thing you do is preserve your cash. Be as cheap as you possibly can. That's back to character. It's something we as venture capitalists look at. Guy comes in and says, I got this business plan and he's got, $250,000 a year for his annual salary and a bunch of bonuses associated with that. We're out of here. No. We work for food. Look for pizza. We want you to preserve the cash and put it into the business. Very good.
And to what Rich was saying earlier too, about, prepping up and getting ready for an investment and all the components and all that, we're not mutually exclusive either, If you're working through Launch Lab, you can work through us. We can coordinate the efforts and take the resources from both organizations and put it together in whatever way is necessary. We just want to state, we need to put everything we have.
One great thing about our state here is that we all know each other, we all trust each other, we all work together all the time.
Yeah.
Can't hide, and
Well,
we
that's
know,
the other thing, yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
we know each other.
You mess with one, everybody knows.
Yeah.
We don't know what a vacation is.
You got a question?
Yeah, so with a student, we don't have safe funds when we come out of college. So if we were to approach venture capital for funding, we are supposed to put salaries and that sort of thing into it to sustain us for food and housing and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm not a venture capital guy, but even from the bank standpoint, like Guy said and Mike said here is, you're not going to pay yourself the penultimate salary. That's the thing. We expect you to pay yourself something. I mean, if I'm looking at cash flows and I see all this money going all over the place, but I don't see you making anything, my first question is, what are you doing? I mean, where do you have a secondary source of income I don't know about? We're going to ask that. So yeah, we expect you to take something out of it, just not
Yes,
not
maybe.
say couple $100,000 a year so you can buy the Mercedes Benz and look good to other folks. No, your product is going to what makes you look good to other folks.
That's the use of funds slide, right? There is a line there for salaries.
Right.
And they should be very, very concerned.
Any questions?
Oh, so if someone comes to you with a software idea, what aspects do you analyze out of his idea to make a decision? And let's say he has a prototype.
We've looked deeply at the business plan. Most of it have enough experience to at least ask intelligent questions about what this thing does and what it's for and what the competition is. But it's really up to you to do the quote selling of why this idea is a good idea in the first place. And then we will just go back and forth and ask certain questions and do what we call due diligence, which is a deep dive into what this solution is all about, what the people are all about, how we're going to get our money back if we invest in you, all those type of things. I don't think we invented anything new here. We have some good idea, present it well, and have a conversation.
From their standpoint, they will have probably a lot better idea of what their product would be. But if you go to talk to a lender by some standard, assume we are idiots. I mean, literally, that's what the business plan is there for, to spell out to us so we understand it. I mean, that's your job, is to sell your idea to us, for us to give you money.
If I could jump in a little bit, so if you've developed the coding, be prepared to tell the investor or the lender who was the actual coders and how you protected that. Sometimes they'll actually require that you take some of the coding and put it in what they call an escrow account. And it's a means of protecting the coding, so that's important. So if you are a software developer, you want to look into that. It not only gives a sense of protection that protects you, your company, and don't be surprised if they want to see the copyright protection in the name of your company, because at the end of the day, they're investing in your company. But you'll want to explore, how to protect the code and who was the creator of the code. If there were numerous people and a bunch of people pitched in, it gets a little more complicated. If there was one person and the coding's been very concentratedly developed, then there's a comfort level and you can move towards protecting it. But you're going to want to look at that as well.
And that's part of the 15 steps, getting a copyright of the company
Oh.
before going to land.
No, that's not necessarily included specifically, but I could, if you give me your name after the presentation, I could give you some resources.
I had a question earlier with the after graduation, no job type deal. Is what in the scenario of you have a full-time job, you are trying to pursue this, how does that work? Does that kind of stray you away from the idea at any stage, or?
We got a couple of people working right now. Again, what you look at is what's the opportunity window, and how do we try to figure out how to shrink that? No, that's definitely an offset.
Right.
For tenacity is an asset. What we want to see, how are we going to make this work? Back to passion, character, tenacity, all those things are really important attributes of a good entrepreneur.
From the lender's side of it, we're gonna ask you, you're gonna keep your day job, because we like the secondary source of income, because we're giving you a business loan, and the business is gonna be making this product and selling and cash flowing, but there's gonna be hiccups. And there's probably gonna be a couple months time frame where there might not be that much cash flow. That secondary source of income is a strengthener on the entire deal. So that's one of the first questions. If you walk in and says, well, I have my full-time job here and I want to do this, are you going to keep your day job? Or if you are married, in some instances we'll ask, well, does the wife or does the spouse work? Husband or wife, do they work? It's not that we want to involve them in it, but if it's a way for us to strengthen the deal, we will sometimes ask the spouse to sign as a guarantor on it also for that secondary source of income, which strengthens the deal. It really does.
In terms of coming to you at a point where, prototype, I know someone mentioned about coming to you with something they can show you, right? As opposed to maybe an idea that's in the works. Is there any point on whether it's seesawed almost as to which is preferred or what is looked at as a kind of more nicer product to invest in or an idea to invest in? More like, is it a product or is it still an idea?
We take comfort in that piece. Come with an idea.
Right. Okay.
Good place to start with Guy. If you have an idea, I say, we'll look at it now.
And actually, not an applicant, but we looked at just concepts, and then figured out what are the resources we can use to help put that together.
But again, we hope you use the resources available here to be a little more prepared before we get to talk to us. I don't mean to sound arrogant.
No.
Our time is valuable as well. It's better for you.
See, on the lending side, we're on the absolute end. Well, we're at that part where you are already in the commercialization stage, but you're looking to buy your equipment to make your own product. So at that point, you should have at least had all your R&D and everything, and some prototype, if not a beta phase, even already run. So now you know the type of equipment you're going to get. That's where the lenders are going to look at. We're end stage on a lot of stuff with this. I might be painting the wrong picture here, but these guys are probably more, they're the R&D gurus. That's the best way for me to put it.
Little students came to us with an idea and basically said, this is where the idea came from, out of the work environment that we're in. This is a humongous need that we see. We've done some initial development around how it will work and how it will put together.
we're here to help.
Yeah.
You know, I think we're all, like I said, it's a small state. Only 1.8 million people here in the state of West Virginia, which is good, it's bad. To me, it's good, because we're close, we care about each other. Most of us just want to see you young people in particular create great companies, great wealth in the state, stay here, grow the state.
Yeah, you,
I have a question. So I kind of learned from this presentation that your particular funds might not be starting for funding our business. Like the idea of our business that we're trying to start is a small business with, we're trying to price our shares so that it's relatively high return over a long period. You know, so it's more in the traditional small business realm. We'd like to give our investors really good returns. So we feel like we have an attractive product to offer people, but it's a long-term investment. It's relatively illiquid and high yielding over a long period of time. So who is the market for this investment? You know, high net worth individuals are definitely.
If you got a great idea and that's the way you want to articulate it, you find an angel someplace or some high wealth individual who wants to take a shot at it, go for it.
Well, that's what we're trying to do. But so who are those people?
Well,
That's
I
like,
would say,
that's what I
don't
really like to
assume
think.
we're
So
not-
I guess that's like, you know, your group offers almost a format. Hey, come talk to us.
Yeah.
You know, we're gonna invest in you. We'd like to make money with you. And I guess we're
well,
still.
you have to start somewhere. I mean, don't be afraid to worst case
I've
talk
talked to
them.
lots of people.
Yeah.
So like just like we're 2 years in, like, and we've spent $50,000 each year. You know, so it's like $110,000 in. It's a solid business plan. It will make money. Yeah, we just need money. So who? I guess like what? Maybe this is like who else is there to talk to, or what type of investment groups beyond just startup venture fund? We're not. I guess we're not a startup. We're a small business. So, or what? Like that's kind of why I was sort of focusing on this. It's kind of gray area. Like McDonald's in day one is that a startup or is it a small business? You know, or even it doesn't need to be that dramatic. But
Everybody's a startup at one point. I mean, that's just, yeah. Have you sold anything?
yes,
You have
as
sold
of last
product.
week, yeah.
So-
Well, no, a product? No, it's a fixed capital business. So like a railroad can't sell any railroad time until they build a railroad. So it takes a lot of money.
Right.
Build the railroad, and so you can't make money until you build the product. In our case.
Okay. So you're kind of at the commercialization stage then more than anything. Yes, no?
Just I think
Yeah, I mean,
We're-
you haven't told us anything that we would say, I want to party with that guy.
What's that?
I said, you haven't told us anything in this 2-minute conversation that would get us excited to want to work with you until you either give us some details or provide us a business plan or talk
I can
about
do
what
that.
this thing is all about.
And that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
I wouldn't discount any, well, maybe me,
I guess
but
that's what
anybody
you're saying.
here,
You're looking
but-
at 10 times, 20 times valuation. And maybe that could happen in our business, but it's a cash flow business. So like, yeah, we're gonna bank fund our business. It's definitely like a portion of our funding. We'd like to sell equity, you know, to get to, because the bank needs down payment. That's really what happens.
Well, that's, when you're talking about debt financing in this instance, you're saying you're looking for somebody to invest, in you to have that down payment then? Or are you looking for an investor to avoid the debt financing?
No, I'm looking for an investor to help us meet the down payment.
Okay.
What's
That-
in, what's in it
that's
for
a-
the
that's-
investor?
What's that?
What's in it for me?
Yeah.
Dividends, annualized dividends, and those dividends grow as a company grows.
Now I'm gonna start to sound like Mr. Wonderful. I mean, the idea is,
You're
you're asking
taking my
people for
job
money,
now.
how am I gonna get my money out of this deal?
Yeah.
How do I get my money back?
Now
I
you
don't
said,
know.
okay.
So even from the debt financing side of it, it's, if you're talking, it could take a while for you to generate cash flow, that's still gonna make us a little worried unless we gotta prove.
Should be able to make cash flow demands on month one.
Okay, well, that's what I'm saying, sitting down and talking to anybody is your number one. So the plan is your most important piece to whoever you're talking to. Even though you might think these guys might not be an avenue to look at, they may be, they may not be, but the beauty part is we all work together. We're not competition to each other, so to speak. So if you know, Guy might be, you might talk to Guy and he says, well, this really isn't up my alley. Maybe you should be talking to Huntington Bank or to somebody of that nature. That's what we'll do also. We will get you with those people. Don't just assume that because you talk to us, you're done. It's not that simple. Sometimes it just takes us putting all of our heads together and getting you where you need to be. You will not just talk to one person and be done with it. You might talk to 9 banks or whomever before you even get an answer.
Yeah, we're learning that.
Yeah. Just give us a shout. We'll, any of us, you know, call them. We'll work something out with you. Yeah.
Sonia, Scott, anything else?
So if we come up with an idea, right, a great idea, what is the chance that somebody might take that idea and just start their own thing if that other guy's slow down? Do we sign something?
Can you trust the guy, if you come to us, can you trust us that we're not gonna say, hey, pretty cool idea, hell, this guy, we're
Take
gonna
it.
run with it? Well, I'll tell you one thing, you know, we didn't mention this term before, but non-disclosure agreements and stuff like that. As a rule, we don't usually sign NDAs. Venture capital people do not. You basically have to trust that you're dealing with a reputable investor who's not gonna take your idea and run with it and go find somebody else to use it. You're just never gonna see that, that's just the nature of it.
And here's a hard truth in the world. There is no shortage of absolutely brilliant ideas. We see hundreds of them on a weekly basis. There's a very, very extreme shortage of smart people able to execute on those ideas. And so, Mike and Guy don't have the time to steal everybody's ideas. They're busy funding and pushing ideas with people that are in a position to execute on good ideas. And so, deal with people that are reputable in the community and trust them, because there's no way in the world that any of us would have the time to steal.
Sometimes you just gotta take that leap of faith. It's the risk. It's the risk of an entrepreneur.
Now, talking to a company that might be competitive, be very careful.
Yeah.
And that's very cautious.
Yeah.
Yeah, be careful there.
All right, well, on behalf of the Launch Lab, thank you so much, gentlemen, for being part of this panel, and thank you, everyone, for coming. And we'd just like to invite you all to our women's pitch competition coming up on November 1st. But thank you all so much for coming.